but what is my child's life going to look like if they don't have these skills?
And again, each child is different. There will be lots of different things happening. However, if they don't have emotional intelligence, so what emotional intelligence does, it builds resilience. So having understanding and being able to manage our emotions and regulate our emotions and do that in a healthy, positive way makes us much nicer people to be around. So that, and again, if you look at kids who have resilience, if you look at children who have emotional intelligence, the long-term outcomes, so kids who don't often have poorer grades, often have more experience with the criminal justice system or the jail system, so there's more negative life outcomes there. Less positive mental health, so young people who can't regulate their emotions or who have difficulty with their emotional intelligence and don't understand how to deal with their anger or frustration or disappointment can often have worse mental health outcomes. And this, don't think that this goes on to your 20s or 30s, which it will. The mental health stuff starts, 50% of mental health problems start before the age of 14. So they
and
have
goes on until you're alive.
That's right. And they have their genesis in understand. So what does that look like? We've got to start teaching our children these skills proactively in the early childhood years, in those 0 to 8 to 9, 10, 11, because ultimately those are the skills they need. These will help them get jobs. These will help them, even if it's looking at what do I want to do? It could be working from home, because a lot of us work from home now. A lot of people work from home. Well, what does that have to be? They actually have to have the ability to manage themselves, to understand, oh, I can't just go and do whatever I want to do. So how do I manage my behavior? So if we were looking and saying, how can we make them competitive in an environment that's going to be with a lot of artificial intelligence, with a lot of things that are being automated? We need to give our children the soft skills, give them exactly as you said at the beginning, to look at and say, you get called back into organizations because of your people skills, because of your ability to relate to others. How do you make them feel? You make them feel seen, you make them feel heard, you make them feel understood. And that's very much the second part of emotional intelligence. So the first part is you would have a good or you have an understanding of your emotions. You're able to regulate them. So the things people might say something in an organization that makes you angry, but you don't smack them in the nose. You just go, you know what? Most probably not going to deal with that person, or I might say it a different way next time, or we don't go and talk about that topic. But you then go, okay, that's how I need to manage that person. So awareness of others and social relationship management, you've got that skill as well. That's why you're getting repeat business. That's why people want you in their company. So if we were looking at saying, how do we give our children the skills and tools they need for the 21st or going into the 21st century? Absolutely. Emotional intelligence. We need to give them the resilience they need to, because there are going to be setbacks. There are going to be holes in like potholes in the road that we have to teach them. There will be kids who bully them.
Absolutely.
And you cannot, and then not just kids who bully them, there's bullies in the workplace. So how do we deal with that? What does it look like? Those are the sorts of skills that we need to give. Otherwise, the life outcomes, so they would have reduced income, a reduced chance of getting other jobs, all of those sorts of things. There's negative outcomes for that if they don't have these skills.
Right. And, interestingly, Carrie, like you mentioned, they will not be able to, fit in nicely in a job system. And but I also want you to briefly touch upon how will I'm coming from a space of, when as parents, when we are bringing up our children, we want to see them happy, right? I mean, that happy can mean 10 different things, but that's the bottom line. You want your child to be happy and successful. And for most part of our lives, as parents, we are focused on making our children successful because we want them to do good in math and language and science and soccer and basketball or whatever, but pick up every skill in the world that is going to put you on the map, right? And I'm just going to take a very, very bad example right now, but I just want to bring home the point. Your child could be the CEO of the biggest company in the world, but because he or she has not been able to deal with his or her emotional state, has gotten into a toxic marriage. It's over, right?
Oh, and that is the critical part. When you look at it, how do I, or doesn't know how to then extricate themselves from that marriage. So doesn't know
Right.
how to, or feels again, has tied their self-worth up with being, I must be a CEO, so I need to work all the time, or I must do this, or that's where my worth comes from. And
Yeah.
that's why we need to teach our children these skills, because ultimately life is not being about being happy all the time.
Yeah.
That's actually a disorder.
Exactly.
It's called
Yeah.
mania. You can't be happy all the time. What
Right.
we're teaching our kids the skills of is, you know what? Sometimes bad, crappy things happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't get the job we want, or sometimes people die. That's why having pets, whether it be a fish, a cat, a gold, like that's often good for, very good for children, because it
Hmm.
teaches them that things die. And how do we deal with that? How do we deal with death? Because what's going on now, and we have a mental health crisis in our young people. I
Yeah.
cannot, and we all know that, like globally, we're very
Yeah.
aware of that. And what's going on is that these kids don't see light at the end of the tunnel. They see they've got these bad things that happen to them, and it feels like their heart is being ripped out of their chest. And they think, oh, the world would be a better place without me. They don't
Right.
have the skills to
To
go,
cope up.
is that
Yeah.
actually right? Is that a correct thought? Or is that just a negative Nelly that's sitting on my shoulder and telling me that at the moment? And
Right.
what does it look like? So it's teaching our kids these skills to go, you know what, it might not be happy, but I know that things are going to get better. Teaching them to have a more optimistic outlook, to say, you know what, right now it looks like it's pretty crap, but I know it's going to get better because I've been through sorts of this stuff before. It was yuck. It didn't feel very nice.
Right.
And I've learned that if I do this, and even at that stage or point in time, I will go get a bar of chocolate and I'm going to eat that bar, whatever it is, rather than going to a very dark place. We teach them that these are the healthy ways of dealing with it. And that's the sort of stuff that as parents, we've got to look at. It's like giving our kids a toolkit. And that
Correct.
toolkit is
Yeah.
going to be things they can use for the rest of their lives so that they can keep themselves. I guess I most probably wouldn't say happy all the time, although we desperately want them to be happy. We
Yeah.
want them to be emotionally healthy and well.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. To your
And that
point.
and that's
Yeah.
part
Go
of
ahead.
being happy. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. No, no, no. I was like, to your point where you said, we want to give them the tools to kind of, because life's not going to be fair all the time. And I feel like, maybe life is not fair most of the times. But what defines how you're feeling about it is things are going to happen, you're going to fall tomorrow. But your happiness is not dependent on whether it's going to be okay tomorrow or not. Your happiness is dependent on whether you are able to dust yourself, get up again, and say, you know what, I'm going to try one more time.
Yep.
Because we all know science says that action releases all those happy chemicals,
Mm,
and you feel happier. You may not lose the weight, but walking itself is still going to keep you in an emotionally stable situation. I mean,
mm,
I walk, but I hardly ever lose weight. I don't know why. I've never tried to figure that out. My target is always get the blood work done. If the blood work is fine, I'm fine.
mhm.
So, but I try to keep myself physically active precisely from this point, that I know I'm doing something towards my physical fitness, because not walking is actually going to make it, sort of make me feel awful. you know so that
And
action
that's
itself,
again, that's a healthy part. Exactly. A
yeah.
very healthy part, to take care of your well-being, to take, and it's how do we teach our kids to take care of their brains? So it's not just going, oh, I feel sick. It's actually going, you know what? I need to get out in nature, or I need to go for a walk, or
Yeah.
I need to drink more water, or I need to stop scrolling. And I don't know where I don't have my phone close to me. I need to stop
Yeah.
scrolling through my phone. So
Mm,
it's actually knowing what are we doing to take care of our brains and our mental health, just like we're
mm,
taking care of our physical health. So,
correct.
just like you put sunscreen on to make sure
Yeah.
we don't get sunburnt, we go, you know what? I don't stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning watching Netflix because I know I'm going to be tired the next day, and my brain and my body needs sleep. So,
Correct.
how do I keep my brain healthy? It's
Yeah.
about keeping our brain and mental health healthy as well as our bodies healthy. So, all of those things that you were saying, take good care of your brain and your body and
Yeah.
your mental health. And we
Yes.
need to teach our kids those things,
Yeah.
because then they will realize when they're in that, if they were in a toxic marriage, you know what? This is not good for me emotionally. It's not
Yeah.
good for me psychologically or mentally. And I need to leave. And it will be hard. And I will have to have
Yeah.
very hard conversations. And
Yeah.
I don't like it, but
But
that's
it's okay.
better for
Yeah.
me than staying here long term.
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, the marriage could be just toxic because you're not able to deal with your own baggages, not necessarily that there's something wrong. It's just that
Mm.
person A has not dealt with their own,
Yep.
baggage, and both of them coming together are creating the toxicity. Whereas if you were able to deal with it, you would not bring in, that baggage to the table.
Mm.
So anyhow.